She blocked the man who owned her career in the middle of a snowstorm. Now the only light in her night is a stranger's lantern and his steady eyes. When the
It's been
power
too long
dies,
since
she
we
has to
just sat like
choose.
this.
Go
I
back to
know.
him or
I've
stay
missed
with the
it.
fire.
Missed you.
Dive in, make sure to hit subscribe, tap like and share this video. The more voices we reach, the louder these stories become. And drop your city in the comments. Let's see where love finds us. The wind knifed down the avenue so hard it felt personal. Rianne Blake wrapped her coat tighter, but the thin wool might as well have been tissue paper. Snow spun under the streetlights in frantic little whirlwinds, clinging to her hair, to the bare skin at the top of her chest where her dress dipped low. She hadn't thought about the weather when she stormed out. She hadn't thought about anything except getting away. Her heels slipped on the iced sidewalk, but she barely noticed. Her body was a soft, full silhouette in the city's hard-edged cold, thick thighs hugged by black tights, hips filling out the fitted emerald dress that cinched her waist and framed the curve of her breasts. Normally she was annoyingly aware of the way men's eyes followed her. Tonight there was just one voice echoing in her head. "Don't be ridiculous, Rianne. You knew what this was." Ben's words had landed like a slap in the middle of the restaurant, softly spoken but sharp enough to split her open. The flicker of candlelight on white tablecloths, the way he hadn't even flinched when he saw the tears in her hazel eyes, the way he'd checked his watch before he'd checked if she was okay. Her phone buzzed in her hand again. She didn't look at the screen. She knew it was him. "You're overreacting. Come back inside. We can talk about this rationally." Rationally. The word tasted bitter. She stepped off the curb without waiting for the light, a taxi's horn blaring as it swerved around her. For a split second, adrenaline burned hot enough to cut through the cold, and she wondered, distantly, if she'd care if he'd hit her. Probably not. At least it would have been something she chose, instead of something done to her. Snow had already crept into her open coat, dampening the neckline of her dress. Rianne shivered, her teeth knocking together, but the tightness in her chest was a different kind of cold. A deep, lonely freeze that had been building for years, through late nights at the office, through holidays spent around conference tables instead of family ones, through every time she'd swallowed hurt, because this is how you get ahead. Because that's what Ben had promised, hadn't he? Mentorship, sponsorship, that word he loved, partnership. Partnership that somehow always meant his name on the presentations and her doing the 2 a.m. edits. His hand on her back at company parties, his room key pressed into her palm with a smile that said, "This is just how it works, sweetheart." Her phone buzzed again. She stopped under a dim street lamp, breath rushing out in ragged clouds, and finally looked. "Don't make a scene. You're walking away from everything we've built. Be smart. Come back upstairs." "We can fix this." Her fingers trembled both from cold and fury as she typed. "Rianne, you're engaged." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "It's complicated." She laughed out loud, a harsh, broken sound that startled a passing couple. The woman shot her a concerned glance. The man pulled his scarf tighter and kept walking. Complicated. Right. She looked around, suddenly disoriented. She'd walked farther than she realized. The restaurant's golden glow was gone. The storefronts here were darker, older, neon signs flickering over closed shops, and one narrow alley that reeked faintly of oil and wet concrete. The wind picked up, lashing her hair into her face. She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand and winced at the smear of mascara on her glove. Her toes were numb, her fingers hurt. She just needed somewhere. Anywhere that wasn't her apartment with its neat shelves and carefully curated plants and the bed she'd let Ben into far too many times. A small yellow-orange glow caught her eye halfway down the block. Tucked between a shuttered laundromat and a dark convenience store was a door she'd never noticed before. Above it hung a weathered wooden sign, the Hollow Lantern. Warm light spilled out from the narrow windows, flickering like live flame instead of the harsh white of LED strips. For a moment she thought she was imagining it, that her brain was conjuring some storybook refuge as her body started to shake with the cold. But when she stepped closer she could see the fogged glass, the faint movement of silhouettes inside, and she inhaled, surprised, the scent of something rich and comforting. Coffee, maybe, and cinnamon, and the faintest whisper of smoke. Her phone buzzed once more. Don't do something you can't come back from. Rianne stared at the message. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, then drifted instead to the side of the phone. She held the lock button, watched his name vanish from the screen, turned the phone off. The silence that rushed in was almost physical. She pushed the door open. Heat hit her first. Not the dry, over-conditioned warmth of office buildings, but the close, living heat of a room full of human bodies and steam and light. The air smelled like coffee, orange peel, and a hint of wood smoke, as if someone somewhere had a real fire going. The inside of the hollow lantern looked like a secret. Brick walls, lined with mismatched shelves cluttered with old books and small plants. A string of amber fairy lights ran along the ceiling, but the main illumination came from actual lanterns on each table, glass and metal, candles burning inside them, their flames soft and steady. Her shivering intensified as the feeling came back to her skin. She hugged her coat tighter around her, suddenly too aware of her damp neckline, of the way her curves were outlined under the thin fabric. A couple in the corner glanced up from their mugs. A woman at the bar gave her a quick, assessing look before turning back to her drink. "Hey." The voice came from her right, low and warm. Not the polished, practiced smoothness she was used to from boardrooms, but something gentler. She turned. He stood behind the counter, drying a mug with a towel that had seen better days. Tall, broad-shouldered, deep brown skin that glowed bronze under the lantern light. His t-shirt clung to a chest that suggested more than a passing familiarity with heavy lifting, and the tattoos inked along his forearms shifted as he moved, delicate linework of leaves, constellations, and something that looked like a small bird escaping from a cage. His hair was cropped short, his beard neatly trimmed, framing a mouth that looked like it knew how to smile but wasn't doing it just yet. His eyes, dark, steady, and unexpectedly soft, rested on her face, then flickered briefly to her bare collarbone, the damp edges of her dress, and back up without lingering. Not hungry, just taking in the details. "You look like you're about to turn into an icicle," he said. "Can I get you something hot before you freeze solid?" The kindness in his tone almost undid her. Her throat tightened so abruptly it hurt. "Ah!" Her voice came out hoarse. She cleared it. "Coffee? Or whatever you have that's strong." His mouth tugged just a little at one corner. There it was, the almost smile. "We've got coffee, and we've got something better." He set the mug down, nodding toward an empty table near the small gas fireplace flickering in the corner. "Grab that spot by the fire. I'll bring you something that'll thaw you out." She hesitated. "You don't even know what I like." His gaze held hers for a long beat. In that moment, the noise of the room faded, the low murmur of conversation, the clink of ceramic, the soft crackle of the gas flame. "You look," he said slowly, "like you've had a very bad night. People who come in here like that usually need something warm, a little sweet, and strong enough that they feel it in their chest on the first sip." Another tiny tug at his mouth. "If I'm wrong, you can yell at me and I'll make you something else." Despite everything, a faint, incredulous laugh slipped out of her. "You're very confident, aren't you?" "Not really," he shrugged. "Just practiced. You're not the first to come in out of the storm." His eyes softened again, that steady warmth turning brighter. "Go sit. You're shaking." Only then did she realize she was. Her legs felt unreliable, her hands clumsy as she unbuttoned her coat and shrugged it off, draping it over one arm. The lanterns reflected in the window as she crossed the room, turning her curves into soft, shifting shadows. She could feel the flushed heat rising to her cheeks, and not just from the temperature change. She sat in the armchair closest to the fire, the cushions hugging her hips, the heat from the faux logs seeping through her tights and into her bones. For the first time that night, the cold in her fingers began to recede. The other cold, the one wrapped around her heart, held on tighter. She stared into the fire, everything she'd shoved down roaring up again. Ben's dismissive tone, the way he'd said it's gone. It's complicated like that excused everything. The realization that she had built her life around a man who thought she was a resource, not a person. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. "Okay," the warm voice said softly, closer now. "Let's see if this works." She looked up. He was standing in front of her, holding a thick ceramic mug between his hands. The lantern light carved gold into the planes of his face, catching on his lashes on the small scar above his eyebrow. Up close he felt even bigger, like he could cast a shadow long enough to cover her. He crouched so they were at eye level and held the mug out, careful not to let their fingers brush. "House special," he said. "Dark roast mocha, extra shot, orange zest, touch of cinnamon. It's a little weird, trust me." The steam rose between them, carrying the scent of chocolate and citrus and something deeper. Rianne wrapped her hands around the mug. Their fingers finally touched for a second. His skin hot, calloused, steady, and a jolt went through her that had nothing to do with temperature. "Thank you," she managed. "You're welcome." He straightened, but his eyes lingered on her face, searching without prying. "If you want to talk, I'm here till close. If you want to sit and pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist, I can do that too. I'm good at refills and minding my own business." The corner of her mouth twitched. "Is that your tagline?" "Nah." His smile this time was small but real. It hit her like the first touch of heat after being too long in the snow. "Just my specialty." He turned to go back behind the counter, then paused and glanced over his shoulder. "I'm Malik, by the way." "Rianne," she said, surprising herself with how small her voice sounded. "I'm Rianne." "Nice to meet you, Rianne." His gaze warmed again like embers being stirred. "You're safe in here. Warm up." He walked away, leaving her with the mug cradled in her palms and the fire reflecting in the wet sheen of her eyes. She took a sip. The drink hit her tongue hot and rich, the chocolate and coffee grounding, the orange bright and unexpected, the cinnamon burning just enough at the back of her throat. The warmth travelled down into her chest in a slow, spreading bloom, loosening something tight inside her. Outside, the storm raged on, glass and ice and harsh white light. Inside, for the first time in a very long time, Rianne felt the smallest flicker of something she'd almost given up on. Not joy. Not yet. But heat. And the man behind the counter, steady hands, dark eyes, soft smile, felt impossibly like firelight on the coldest night of her life. Time blurred into the slow, steady drip of melting ice. Rianne didn't know how long she sat there, cupped around the mug like it was the only warm thing left in the world. The fire hissed gently, blue-orange flames licking the fake logs, and the lanterns on the tables flickered in a lazy, hypnotic rhythm. Her chest hurt in that hollow, echoing way grief did when it finally hit, but the drink in her hand sent soft pulses of heat through the ache. People came and went around her. A guy in a beanie laughed too loudly at something his friend said. A woman in a red coat tapped away on her laptop. An older couple shared a slice of cake, forks clinking quietly. The hollow lantern hummed with low conversations and clinks and rustling pages, a small planet spinning on its own axis while the storm outside threw itself at the windows. She pulled her dress down over her thighs, suddenly conscious of how much skin the neckline still showed, of the way her curves filled the armchair. In another life, another night, she would have straightened her posture, adjusted herself to make sure she looked professional, put together, worth the room. Tonight, she just felt human, bare, too soft for all the sharp edges she'd tried to live in. "Refill?" She looked up. Malik stood a few feet away, holding the coffee pot, one eyebrow lifted in question. Up close again, he seemed even larger, his broad shoulders filling out the dark t-shirt, the muscles in his forearms flexing under the ink as he shifted his grip. "You've been nursing that for a while," he added, mouth curving. "I can't decide if that means you love it or you're suffering through out of politeness." A small, reluctant smile tugged at her lips. "Love it," she said. "I'm just thinking slowly tonight." His eyes softened. "Then we're in business." He stepped closer, tipping the pot toward her mug. "Top up?" She hesitated. "Isn't there like a caffeine limit before my heart explodes?" "I have decaf," he said, "and a very strict policy against exploding hearts on the premises. I'd get terrible reviews." That startled a real laugh out of her, sharp and bright before it melted into something softer. She held the mug out. "Decaf, then. I already feel everything too much tonight." "Copy that." He poured, the dark liquid swirling into the remnants of the mocha. The smell rose up again, rich and comforting. "Want company, or are you on a solo mission?" She swallowed, fingers tightening around the warm ceramic. A part of her, the part trained to say "I'm fine, I'm good, don't worry," started to push the words out on autopilot. "Solo miss," Her voice cracked. She stopped, jaw clenching. Malik watched her, not flinching at the crack, not looking away like other people did when emotions got too close to the surface. His gaze was steady, a quiet question without pressure. "I don't know," she admitted, the truth slipping out in a whisper. "I don't actually know what I want." His smile this time was barely there, just a soft tilt of his mouth. "That's an acceptable answer here," he said. "Tell you what, I'll clean this section of the bar very slowly right there." He nodded toward the counter closest to her chair. "And if you feel like talking, I'm within range. If not, you can pretend I'm a very handsome houseplant." She snorted. "You think very highly of yourself." "Hey, I said pretend." He straightened, backing away with his hands raised in mock surrender. "I know my place. Fern with tattoos." "That's not better," she muttered, but her mouth was definitely curving now. He moved behind the counter, pulling out a rag and a spray bottle. As promised, he stayed close to her corner, wiping down the surface in slow, methodical strokes. Every few minutes he glanced her way. Not hovering, not staring, just checking. It felt strange to be watched without being measured. Her phone sat in her lap, a dark, glossy rectangle. It had been off long enough that her fingers itched. What if there was an emergency? What if something happened at work? What if her brain tried to throw up a dozen reasons to turn it back on, most of them wearing Ben's voice like a mask? "Can I ask you something?" Malik's voice drifted over, casual. She looked up. "That depends. Is it about my coffee order or my tragic life choices?" He huffed a quiet laugh. "Bit of column A, bit of column B." He set the spray bottle down, leaning his hip against the counter. The lantern light behind him outlined his profile, the strong line of his nose, the fullness of his mouth. "Are you waiting for someone to show up, or hiding from someone who might?" The question hit so close to center that Rianne's fingers twitched around her phone. "That obvious?" He lifted one shoulder. "I see a lot of faces in here. There's a difference between someone killing time and someone on the run." His eyes dropped to the phone in her lap for half a second, then back up. "You keep looking at that like it bit you." "Feels like it did," she said. Her voice had gone oddly flat. He nodded once, like that was the most reasonable thing in the world. "So don't feed it." "That's not how jobs work," she said, sharper than she meant to. "Or whatever this is." Her tongue felt clumsy. She hated how exposed she suddenly felt, how easily his question had peeled her open. He didn't bristle. "You don't have to tell me," he said quietly. "Seriously, you can lie and say you're just really committed to your doom-scrolling habit. I'll still bring you pastries." "I'm not." The words stalled in her throat, snagging on the truth underneath. "I'm not okay." She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Malik was still there, hands loose, expression open. No impatience, no expectation. He looked like someone who knew how to sit with other people's mess. The words slid out before she could reel them back. "He's engaged," she said. Malik's brow furrowed. "Your boss?" Her mouth twisted. "Of course you guessed that." "Your coat looks expensive," he said gently. "Dress too. You talk like you write emails in your sleep. My money was on corporate nonsense before you even sat down." A humorless sound escaped her. "Corporate nonsense," she repeated. "That's one word for it." He waited. Rianne took a breath that shuddered on the way in. "We've been involved for 2 years. He said he was leaving her, said he needed time, that the board would implode if it got messy, that I just had to be patient, that this was how things were, that you don't get where he is without sacrifices." Her throat burned. "I built entire decks to defend his decisions while he lied to my face, while he bought her a ring, a house, a wedding planner." Malik's jaw tightened, a small flash of heat in his eyes. "And he told you tonight?" "Worse." The memory hit like a cold wave. He told the table, bought dinner, announced it with champagne, called her his forever. Her laugh came out jagged. "I didn't even know her name until 5 hours ago. I just had to sit there and clap." Silence settled between them, thick but not empty. Malik's hands had curled around the edge of the counter. She could see the tendons stand out under his skin. "And when you said something?" he asked, voice quieter now. She swallowed. "He waited until we were alone and told me, 'Don't be ridiculous, Rianne. You knew what this was.' Like I was some stupid intern who misunderstood the assignment. Like I hadn't given him everything." Her cheeks burned hot. "So I left, before I cried in front of all of them. Malik was very still. Then he blew out a slow breath as if he'd been holding it with her. "I'm sorry," he said simply. 2 words. No excuses, no devil's advocate spin, no nugs. Well, to be fair, her eyes stung. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough." His gaze held hers, steady as flame. That was cruel. Doesn't matter what his title is. Doesn't matter how complicated he says it is. That was cruelty. The words sat between them, heavy and accurate. Something inside her, something that had been twisted into knots of self-blame and rationalization, loosened a fraction. She looked down at her phone again. Her thumb stroked the edge, restless. "He'll say I overreacted," she murmured, "that I'm tanking my career, that he can fix it if you just go back into the fire," Malik finished quietly. Her eyes lifted. "What?" He tapped the counter with a knuckle, eyes far away for a heartbeat. "I used to work in kitchens. Big ones, fine dining, late nights, screaming chefs, burns on your arms like badges of honor." He turned his wrists, and she noticed faint pale lines under the ink, old scars running across his skin. "You get so used to the heat that you don't notice when it starts killing you slowly. You tell yourself you're lucky to be there, that other people would kill for your spot." He smiled without humor. "Then one day you wake up and realize you can't taste anything anymore, can't feel anything that isn't pain or adrenaline, and you think, is this it? Is this the rest of my life?" "What happened?" she asked before she could stop herself. "Kitchen fire." He shrugged, but something in his eyes flickered. "Minor, in the grand scheme. No one died. But someone forgot to turn off a burner. Someone else forgot to check the hood filters, the grease went up, and suddenly everything I'd been killing myself for was smoke and sprinklers and insurance forms. I walked outside in a soaked chef coat and realized that if I went back in, if I found another kitchen just like it, I'd burn down from the inside out this time." He gestured around them. "So I built this instead. Place where people come in out of the cold, where the fire's contained and no one gets yelled at for dropping a plate." Her lips twitched. "And they get weird coffee with orange in it." "And they get weird coffee with orange in it," he agreed. The story settled into her bones, warm and sharp. Outside, the wind rattled the windows so hard the glass hummed. Inside, the lantern on a table burned steady, its flame making the shadows on Malik's face dance. "You call this place the Hollow Lantern?" she said. "Why?" He glanced up at the sign painted on the inside wall, the words looping in faded gold. For the first time, his expression softened into something almost boyish. "My dad," he said. "When I was a kid, the power went out a lot. Storms, bad wiring, you name it. He'd light this old lantern and set it in the middle of the room. Said, as long as we keep one light on, the night's not winning." He paused. "After he died, I found the lantern in a box, rusted to hell, glass cracked. I fixed it up, put it on that shelf." He nodded toward a corner where an old brass lantern sat, unlit but present. Place needed a name, seemed fitting. A lump rose in her throat. "As long as we keep one light on," she repeated softly. "Yeah." His gaze drifted back to her, heat banked but steady. "Some nights we are that light for each other, even if it's just for an hour over bad jokes and good coffee." Her chest clenched. She dropped her eyes to the phone again, thumb hovering over the side button. "I'm scared," she admitted, the words tasting raw, "of what happens if I don't go back, of how cold it's going to be out there." "It is cold," he said. No false comfort, no denial. It's disorienting, quiet in a way that hurts your ears. You start to miss the noise, even if the noise was killing you. His voice gentled. "But you're already out in it, Rianne. You left the building. You walked through the snow. You're here. You did the hardest part." She stared at him, breath hitching. He nodded toward the phone in her lap. "Turn it on," he said. "See what he did with your silence. Not because you owe him anything, but because you should know the story he's telling you." Her stomach flipped. She hesitated, then pressed the button. The screen flared to life, too bright in the dim room. Notifications flooded it. Missed calls, unread texts, emails. Her name, her work email, her personal, group threads. The numbers stacked up like a panic attack. Ben's name sat at the top. "Ben, this is childish." "You're jeopardizing everything we've worked for. Answer your phone. If you walk away from this, don't expect a reference. Rianne, don't be stupid. We can fix this if you calm down." Her vision blurred. The room tilted slightly. "Hey." Malik's voice anchored her. Read them out loud if you have to. Hear how it sounds outside your head. Her fingers trembled. She picked one at random and obeyed. You knew what this was. Don't rewrite history because your feelings are hurt, she read, each word like ice. She swallowed, throat tight. Malik's eyes darkened. Another, he said softly. You're being ungrateful. No one else would have given you these opportunities. Her voice shook. Another. You don't want to make an enemy of me, Rianne. The last line came out in a whisper. For a moment, the only sounds were the hum of the heater and the quiet crackle of the gas fire. Okay, Malik said, calm but with steel under it. Now imagine a stranger saying that to you in this room, right now. Would you think I should go back to him? He's right. His mouth curved, but there was no humor in it. Or would you throw your coffee in his face and help me escort him out? A wild little laugh tore out of her. It tasted like tears. I'd probably help you shove him through the door. There you go. Malik's shoulders loosened. Sometimes you got to hear it with fresh ears. He nodded at the phone. You don't have to text back. You don't have to explain yourself. Not tonight, but you can choose right now whether his voice gets a key to your head. Her thumb hovered over the open message thread. The block option sat there, quiet and small. Her heart hammered. Blocking him meant cutting off not just the man, but the illusion, the narrative that he held her future, that she had to keep him happy to survive. It meant stepping fully into the cold of not knowing what came next. She lifted her eyes to Malik. His gaze was steady, warm and fierce all at once. You don't owe him your fire, he said quietly. He already proved he'd use it to keep himself warm while you froze. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She didn't bother wiping it away. Her thumb moved. Block this caller? Her breath hitched. She pressed yes. The thread disappeared. The screen went back to the homepage, suddenly, eerily blank. Air rushed out of her lungs in a shuddering exhale she hadn't realized she was holding. Her whole body shook, like something inside had finally cracked and let the cold out. Without a word, Malik grabbed a clean napkin, came around the counter, and set it gently on the arm of her chair within easy reach. He didn't touch her, didn't crowd her, just sat on the low table across from her, elbows on his knees, shoulders loose, presence solid. You just did something brave, he said. It feels like jumping off a building, she whispered. That's what brave usually feels like. His eyes held the firelight, reflecting it back at her in quiet, unwavering warmth. The trick is making sure you jump towards something better. She wiped her eyes, the napkin scratching softly against her skin. Her mascara smeared further. She didn't care. And this, she asked, looking around the small café, the lanterns, the man in front of her who had just watched her cut a tether she'd thought she couldn't live without. Is this better? Malik's smile was small, crooked, real. It's a start, he said. A warm room in a cold night. We can figure out the rest from here. Outside, the wind howled like it wanted to tear the world apart. Inside, Rianne sat with a stranger whose name she'd learned less than an hour ago, and felt for the first time in a long time like the night might not win after all. By the time the shaking stopped, her whole body felt hollow. Not empty, exactly. More like a building after an evacuation. Lights still on, papers still on desks, but the people gone. Adrenaline ebbed, leaving a strange floating quiet in its wake. Rianne sat there, napkin twisted between her fingers, mascara smudged, hair frizzed from melted snow, emerald dress wrinkled at the waist, and for the first time in a very long time she didn't care what she looked like. Malik hadn't moved from the low table across from her. He sat like he was built for staying put when things got bad, forearms resting on his knees, fingers loosely interlaced, shoulders open. His eyes on her were steady, absorbing, like he was cataloguing every tremor and choosing not to turn away. You breathing? He asked quietly. She blinked. I think so. Let's make sure, he nodded toward her hands. Humor me? She exhaled shakily. What, like therapy breathing? Like not passing out in my cafe breathing, he said, mouth twitching. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. I can count. You can roll your eyes. Everyone wins. Despite herself, her lips curved. You're very bossy for a houseplant. I'm a fern with boundaries, he corrected. Ready? He started counting, voice low and slow. She followed, dragging the air in through her nose, holding it, letting it out through her mouth. In 4, hold 2, out 6. The first few rounds felt awkward. By the fifth, her chest loosened enough that the breaths didn't scrape on the way in. "That's it," he murmured. "You don't have to fix your whole life tonight. Just breathe." The words sank into her like warmth. The lights flickered. Rianne's head snapped up. The lanterns swayed in their hooks as the overhead bulbs stuttered, humming. A second later, the café went dark. Someone near the back swore softly. A couple of phones lit up like small blue ghosts. The hum of the refrigerator died, the soft whir of the heater cutting off mid-sigh. For a moment, the only light came from the gas fire in the corner, casting the room in an eerie, shifting orange. "Oh, come on," Malik muttered under his breath. Rianne's heart kicked up. Night pressed against the windows, thick and heavy. The storm outside howled, and without the noise of machines to mask it, the sound felt too big. "You okay?" Malik asked. "I'm fine," she lied, a little too fast. He didn't call her on it. "Stay there a sec." He moved with quiet efficiency, his silhouette cutting across the fire's glow. She heard him behind the counter, the scrape of wood, the clink of metal, a soft curse when something toppled. Then he emerged from the shadows holding an old brass lantern, its glass panels mottled and fogged with age. Even unlit, it looked like it had survived things. He set it gently on the table beside her, fingers deft as he opened the tiny door. "Lucky for us, I'm sentimental," he said, "and paranoid about power companies." He struck a match. The sulphur scent hit first, sharp and clean, then the small flame bloomed to life. He touched it to the wick. The lantern took a breath of its own and flared. Light flooded the small circle around them, warm, imperfect, flickering over the curves of her face, the soft line of her throat, the swell of her chest where her dress dipped low. It painted her hazel eyes in molten gold, pulling out tiny flecks of green she hadn't known were there. It brushed his skin too, gilding the deep brown of his cheeks, catching in the short curl of his lashes, tracing the script of his tattoos as shadows and firelight played across his forearms. The scar above his eyebrow stood out, a pale crescent in the glow. It felt suddenly, fiercely intimate, like the rest of the world had been peeled away, leaving only this small lit island where the rules were different. Rianne swallowed. "Is that?" "My dad's." Malik's voice had gone softer. "The actual hollow lantern. Had to replace the glass, but the frame's the same. She's a little dramatic." He adjusted the wick. The flame shrank, then steadied. "But she shows up when it counts." She stared at it, then at him. Something about the way he said she, like the lantern was family, not an object, hit her in the ribs. "Is it always this dark when the power goes out?" she asked. He glanced at the windows. "Storm this bad?" "Usually, yeah. But most nights I get some light from the street." He nodded toward the nearest lamp post. "Looks like the whole block's out this time." "Great." Her laugh came out thin. "Perfect metaphor." "Could be worse metaphors," he said. "At least this one comes with an actual light." He dragged one of the chairs closer and sat, not across from her now, but beside her, angled so they could both see the lantern and the fire. The arm of his chair brushed hers. Their knees almost touched, a bare inch of space humming between them. "You know," he said after a moment, "you've been talking about him like he owns all the heat in your life." She frowned. "What?" "Your job, your future, your value." He gestured loosely with one hand. "Like he's the sun and you're some planet that'll spin off into the void if you stop orbiting him." She made a face. "Thanks. That's a horrifying image. Sorry." His mouth tipped up. "Chef brain. I think in fire metaphors. But my point stands. You're not a satellite, Rianne. You walk down 3 blocks of ice in those ridiculous heels." His gaze flicked to her shoes and back, a quick, appreciative sweep along the length of her legs before returning to her face. "You're carrying your own heat, whether you know it or not." Heat pricked at the back of her neck, and not just from the flame. "You don't know that?" He studied her for a long moment, lantern light painting soft shadows along the hollow of her collarbone. "I know you walked out of a room designed to keep you in your place. I know you turned off your phone when the person who's been controlling you for 2 years started calling you stupid. I know you came in here shaking and let a stranger see you cry." His voice roughened. "That's not weakness. That's you choosing yourself, over and over, when every script you've been handed says not to." Every word landed like a hand on the small of her back, steadying. "You talk about him like he's a fire," Malik went on. "And he is. but the wrong kind. The kind that eats through whatever you feed it and leaves everything charred. That's not warmth, Rianne. That's consumption. She was quiet. The lantern crackled softly, wick shifting in the pool of melted wax. "And you?" she heard herself ask, voice barely above a whisper. "What kind of fire are you?" His eyes met hers in the dancing light. For a moment he didn't answer. Then, slowly, he let out a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep. "On my best days," he said, "I'd like to think I'm the kind that stays where you set it. Stove burner, fireplace, campfire, something you can sit around with other people and not get scarred." His mouth quirked. "On my worst days, I'm a burned-out match on the floor and someone's tripping over me." She huffed a faint, surprised laugh. "Do you often describe yourself as floor trash to customers?" "Only the special ones," he said. The warmth in his eyes took the sting out of the joke. It did something strange and dangerous in her chest. "You know what's messed up?" she murmured. "I don't know what I am without all of that. Him, the job, the title, the calendar full of meetings that make me feel important." He considered that. "You ever cook?" She blinked. "Attempt. I own a frying pan and a pot. Does that count?" "Have you ever burned something so badly the smoke alarm went off?" he clarified. Her cheeks heated. "I plead the fifth." "Perfect." He leaned back a little, the chair groaning under his bulk. "When that happens, you have two choices. You can open the windows, wave a dish towel around, and convince yourself the kitchen is still fine even though the pan is destroyed and everything smells like charcoal. Or," he held up a hand, palm up, fingers splayed, "you can turn the burner off, scrape the mess into the trash, and admit this meal is dead. Start over, maybe with something simpler, maybe with someone else in the kitchen with you, reading the recipe out loud." His gaze softened even more. "You're standing at the stove right now, Rianne. The alarm is screaming. You get to choose whether you pretend not to hear it." A long, shaky breath left her lungs. In the quiet that followed, she became painfully aware of how close he was. Their knees touched now, somewhere in the shifting and leaning and talking. Just the lightest press of fabric against fabric, but it felt like a live wire. She didn't move away. "What if I don't know how to cook anything else?" she asked. "Then you start with toast." His smile turned crooked, tender. "Or coffee, or writing your own damn recipe instead of following his." The thought frightened and thrilled her at once. "I don't even know what I want." "Okay." He tilted his head. "Let's start smaller. What don't you want?" Her answer came faster than she expected. "I don't want to be someone's secret," she said. "I don't want to wake up every day wondering if today's the day he decides I've outlived my usefulness. I don't want to sit through another meeting where I do all the work and watch him take the credit with a smile that looks like a prize I'm supposed to be grateful for." His jaw tightened again. "Good," he said. "That's a list. Lists are plans waiting to happen." She stared into the lantern, watching the flame bend and bow but never go out. Her reflection wavered on the glass, a thick, curvy woman with streaked mascara and tired eyes, and a dress that still clung stubbornly to every soft inch of her. For the first time, she didn't immediately critique what she saw. "I don't want to keep shrinking," she whispered. "To make room for him." The lantern light caught Malik's expression, something fierce and aching in it. "You shouldn't have to," he said. "You're not small, Rianne, in any way." The way he said it made heat flare low in her stomach. Not leering, not polite, just honest. Like he'd noticed the way her body filled the chair, the way her dress cupped her curves, and decided it was something to state plainly. Her breath hitched, the urge to run and the urge to lean closer collided inside her. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. Snow slapped against the windows. Inside, the storm existed only in faint drafts and the howl of far-off wind. "How late are you open?" she asked after a while. "On nights like this?" He glanced at the door. "Till the last straggler leaves. I don't like shoving people back into the cold before they're ready." "And then," she pressed, "what do you do after you lock up? Go home and sit by your own fire?" He hesitated, usually. A rueful smile, small apartment, ugly couch, very opinionated kettle. His fingers tapped his knee, restless. Sometimes it's quiet in a good way. Sometimes it's just quiet. "You sound lonely," she said before she could swallow the words back. He blinked, as if no one had ever pointed that out to his face. Then he huffed a soft laugh. "Probably because I am, sometimes." Her chest squeezed. He tilted his head, studying her. You got somewhere to land tonight? Technically. She pictured her apartment, dim, neat, smelling faintly of jasmine and printer ink. The expensive coffee machine Ben had bought for us. The bed she'd shared with him, sheets still holding his weight in their memory. Her stomach turned. I don't really want to go back there yet. You don't have to, he said immediately. You can stay here till the storm calms down. I've got blankets in the back. I can make you food, non-burned. His mouth warmed. You can even steal my ugly couch for a few hours if you want. Strict no weirdness policy, though. I like both my kneecaps intact. The offer, so matter-of-fact and unvarnished, made her throat tighten again. You'd do that for someone you just met? Sure. He shrugged one shoulder. Think of it as an investment. Today I'm firelight on your cold night. Next time, maybe you're light on mine. That's how this works. She stared at him. Besides, he added, glancing around the café, this place was built for nights like this. Would be a shame not to use it. She didn't say yes right away. Instead, she sat with the possibility, with the image of herself curled up on some stranger's couch with a blanket that smelled like coffee and spice, and him listening to the storm rage outside while the lantern burned low. It terrified her. It also felt right. I should at least text my neighbour, she said finally, in case I'm, I don't know, murdered by a hospitable barista. I'm a café owner, he corrected. Baristas have better hair. His grin flashed, quick and bright. But yeah, tell your people. I'll heat up some soup. She typed out a brief, slightly vague message to her upstairs neighbour. Hey, got stranded by the storm, staying in a nearby café till things calm down, alive and safe. Don't call the cops, and hit send. No mention of Malik. No mention of the way her heart had started beating in time with the flicker of the lantern. Hours later, after the last customer left, they washed dishes side by side. He rolled the sleeves of his t-shirt higher, muscles flexing as he scrubbed. She dried plates with a towel too big for her hands, hips bumping the counter. They talked about small things, favourite movies, worst meals, the kind of music that made awful days feel slightly less awful. She learned he loved jazz and hated podcasts. He learned she adored trashy reality TV and secretly wanted to write. At some point, she laughed and didn't feel guilty. When the storm finally softened to a whisper and the streetlights sputtered back to life, it was almost dawn. Malik stood by the door with her coat in his hands. You sure? He asked, searching her face. You can still crash here. Couch offer stands. She hesitated, then shook her head. If I don't go home now, I might never go back, she said, and I think I need to see it once more, to decide what I'm taking with me when I leave it behind. His eyes warmed with understanding. Okay. He helped her into her coat, fingers brushing the back of her neck for the briefest electric second. At least let me walk you to a cab. Snow had turned to fine, icy drizzle, the sky a bruised grey-blue at the edges. The city felt oddly clean, like it had been scrubbed overnight. He flagged down a taxi, opened the door for her like it was the most natural thing in the world. She stepped in, then paused, her hand on the frame. Malik? Yeah? She met his gaze, heart thudding. Thank you, for everything, for not making me feel small. His jaw flexed. You were never small, he said. You just met a man who couldn't handle your size in all the ways that matter. Colour rushed to her cheeks at the double meaning. His slow, knowing smile told her he'd meant every one of them. She cleared her throat. Will you be here tomorrow? He glanced back at the glow of the hollow lantern, then at her. Yeah, he said. Door'll be open. Fire'll be on. You come in. I'll make you something new. We can talk resumes and lawsuits and recipes. His eyes softened. Or you can just sit and be warm. Both are allowed. Okay, she whispered. Then I'll see you tomorrow. He stepped back, hand lifting in a small wave. The taxi pulled away from the curb, and she watched him through the rain-streaked window. Tall and solid in the wet dawn, the cafe behind him glowing golden, the old brass lantern visible on a table inside like a heartbeat. Her life outside that cab was still a mess. There would be fallout, fear, loneliness, hard conversations and harder choices. But as the car carried her through streets that no longer felt quite as cold, Rianne wrapped her coat tighter around her thick, soft body and held on to the memory of his eyes in the firelight, his words like hands on either side of her, steadying her as she jumped. She had walked into the storm alone. She was leaving it with a new light to walk toward. For now, that was enough.